Hello everyone, my name is Jess Swart from J Swart Behavior Consulting, and I'm here today to do a quick tip Tuesday and to answer any questions that come up. So I am a board certified behavior analyst. I've been working with children with autism for over 25 years, so it's been a while. I have worked in a range of settings over the years, a lot of early intervention, and in the recent past 10 years, I'd say I've worked with children who are older and definitely have more significant behaviors than perhaps I saw when I was in the early days of working with children with autism. So I am going to quickly introduce some of the things that I provide. I am based in Canada. I am originally from Australia, but I provide face-to-face home-based services here in the Bow Valley. And I have a number of online courses and resources that I'm building. So I already have an wonderful ebook that really goes through everything about understanding behavior. It's something that you can access if you get in contact with me. I'll send you the link. I have a mini course that's actually ended up being longer than I expected, but it's about 3 hours of content, and it really goes through the introductory stages of understanding behavior, understanding autism, understanding the reasons why behavior occurs, talking about some ways that you can engage with your child to increase positive behaviors, how to teach some skills. So that's my mini course, Understanding Autism Behavior, the Parent Roadmap. And then I have my I would say my most comprehensive course, which is the Busting Behaviors Protocol. Now, this goes into much more depth into understanding your child's behavior. It's something you can use throughout your child's life. It's something you can refer to as they grow and develop. And it includes some coaching. So that's the important part. This course is great because you get my personal coaching as you go through it, to troubleshoot, to keep you on track. There's a lot of content in that course. It includes worksheets, it includes resources already done for you, so you don't have to figure out a social story. You don't have to create that token economy system when you come to that part. You don't have it. It has step-by-step worksheets that you can use as well to help you think about how to apply the recommendations to your own child. So if you find that you're not really getting enough from the therapy that you're currently accessing, or you're on waiting lists, then I have a few resources that you can access straight away and start to get the ball rolling. We know early intervention is so important. So it's really, as much as possible, if you can, engage with others who can help you start to put some strategies in place. Maybe you don't have the capacity to have like one-on-one therapy on a regular basis, but there is a lot you can do through your own learning to help your child grow and progress with their skills, so that we can reduce those behaviors of concern, because they really are a barrier to our children making friends, accessing the community, engaging appropriately, attending school and daycare. It's not that we should expect behaviors to be zero, especially for our young ones, right? I was speaking to a parent the other day to say, okay, he's still going to have a meltdown every now and then. He's only 3, or if the child's, under the age of 10, I would say, we're still going to have some pushback from kids. And also we have pushback for their entire lives. That's also important for our kids to know how to, challenge what we're doing with them, or saying to them, or teaching them in an appropriate way. This creates self-advocacy, and it helps them to find their own voice, right? To say, no, I don't like that, or I don't think that's right, or I don't want to do that. And we want to teach that ability to negotiate, to compromise in an appropriate way, as opposed to having a full-blown meltdown and screaming and throwing toys and smashing windows and all that. I have had that happen to me. So Anyway, today, so if you want any access to my courses, or if you want to learn more, send me a message, a Facebook message, or you can email me if you're on my email list. My Facebook profile has my contact information there, so reach out and I'm happy to share. I also have a behavior solutions call where you have a 45-minute free call to discuss any concerns, to look at navigating what the next step would be for you, what the best resources are for you to access if you're not really sure and you want more individualized support. Okay, let's get into things. So just a reminder, this is a Q&A opportunity. So if you have a question, feel free to write it in the comments. I'm going to do a little bit of multitasking here and keep my eye on my page so that if something pops up, I see it. So fingers crossed that all works out. Great, let me just make sure this is good. All right. So also, if you're watching this in the replay, how do I say that? If you're watching the replay of this video, then you can send me a message and I will either be able to answer your question straight away, or I'll keep it and it might be something I discuss in the next Q&A. It's always good to share this information with other families. The more we can share, the more we can benefit from each other. There are so many different tools out there that we really just need to find what works for our child and our family and make the change, right? Sometimes there are strategies that don't have years of evidence behind them, but they are really helpful. And why not continue to use them? The key is make sure it's not harmful, okay? There are some interventions out there that became really popular and children have been harmed. It was bad for their health. Another harmful impact is the financial impact. So if you're doing something that has a huge financial investment, you want to make sure that there is some evidence to show that it's effective. If it doesn't bother you to use that money and lose it, then that's fine. The other harmful thing is time, okay? Our time is precious. And sometimes we don't know what's going to work and we can use some time. And if it doesn't work, that's okay. We'll move on to something else. But if something is going to take a really long period of time and there's not that evidence to support the effectiveness of it, it's using our children's valuable learning time, right? Now, if you've been through this and you've tried things and they haven't worked and you feel like it has been a long time, don't feel guilty. It's okay. It's part of the experience. It's just something to be mindful of. I have for sure, taken courses and spent time on things that I perhaps feel like it didn't bring as much value. Ultimately, every step of our process is part of that journey that we're on. The key is to be mindful and then not be hard on yourself and not feel guilty, but just be aware. That's super important. Okay, so let me double check our comments. Excellent. All right, as I said, if you have a question, feel free to jump in and ask that question. So today I am going to talk about communication. Recently, I think I posted my video that behavior is communication. You hear a lot of therapists saying that, and it really is. Our behaviors are us trying to communicate something to someone. Our children are the same. They often don't have the language capacity to communicate effectively or to the extent that they want to. Our children might have some language, but they can't truly communicate that. Now, our children's difficulty with communication and their difficulty with impulse control are combined together, and then often that there is that explosion, right? So it's not just communication. There are lots of other things going on. Could be rigid and restrictive behaviors. It could be other things happening, sensory overload, right? But there's always communication, right? If our children's getting overloaded, if our child is getting overloaded by the sensory environment and they can't communicate that to avoid it or to reduce it or to get help, then we're going to get that explosion. If our children are really rigid and restrictive and don't like change, and they can't communicate that they don't like it and they need some help through it, or they don't want to do it, or they want to delay it, if they can't communicate that, we're going to get the explosion. All right. Sometimes they can communicate that they don't like it and they still have to do it, right? There are times when we can't avoid everything. We can't just run away from everything. We have to face it, but sometimes it's still too overwhelming for them. They don't have that capacity yet. But I'm going to talk about communication and early communication. So I want to share with you that as a behavior analyst, I have studied verbal behavior. So this is the behavioral perspective of language development and how language develops from our interaction with others and our interaction with our environment and the functional element of language. So language is functional. It serves to get us what we want. It serves to get us away from what we don't want, right? We can use language to really avoid things that we don't like. We use language to engage in social interactions. So we, of course, it might not be verbal language. It could also be signing. So Auslan, which is Australian Sign, or American Sign Language, or sign language from another country, right? We use that to communicate. We might be using pictures or touch chat or Proloquo to go, like a digital form of communication. We might be typing, we might be writing. So all of these forms are communication. And there is an element of either getting what we want, avoiding what we don't want, interacting and engaging in some social relationships. So, and in those social relationships, we're getting something, right? We're getting something, some feel-good emotions that keep us going for more. We're trying to communicate and get our voice out to the world. Maybe we want to share something that is our opinion that might affect other people, or we just want to share it for that pure desire to share. So for our children, especially our young children who have early language, we want to think about imitation. Imitation is super important for our young children. Children will learn from copying others. And this is a broad statement applicable to lots of skills. We naturally learn from copying others. Our children learn from copying others. They hear sounds. They hear us going, oh, hi, wow, when they're little kids, right? Yay, ba ba ba, da da da, right? Saying these different sounds that they come up with and copying each other in this back and forth exchange. So this is crucial to language development. The trouble is that sometimes our kids with autism aren't copying in that way, right? Imitation doesn't naturally evolve for our children with autism. It could be because they are more focused on sensory experiences, right? They might be less focused on people. There's not that natural draw to people's faces and people's bodies and watching that part of the environment. They're looking at the whole environment, right? Their senses their brain might find it hard to isolate those different things within the environment. So they see everything the same. A human is the same as the chair, is the same as the trees, the same as the plane going by. So the people in their world they're not drawn, and their attention isn't drawn to the people as much as the other environmental stimuli. So these are some reasons why our kids might not pick up on it. No judgment here. Let's just understand how their brains are working differently. Now I'm going to jump back to language quickly because I'm not a speech pathologist. There are some BCBAs out there who are speech pathologists, which is an amazing combination. So just keep in mind, a speech pathologist has much broader expertise in language, but can come from varying philosophies. So depending on the program they study, depends on the types of philosophies and I guess practices that, not practices, but like, I can't find the word right now, the different philosophical principles and methodologies. That's it, methodologies that they learn in their course and throughout their career. So know that there are some speech and language principles that come from evidence and that are very strongly evidence-based through the other realms of research within language development. And there are some that are more so people's models or theories, right? So people might have a theory about something, and that is a theory as in they think and they've thought about what's happening and they've observed individuals learning, or they know from their own experience perhaps, or they know from experiences reported by other people how language might have developed, or different elements of language. But this is still a theory. It hasn't been really proven, either because it's very mentalistic, which is like very much cognitive inside the brain, and it's hard to test and track and prove, or it's just a concept, right? So just be mindful that there's different ways of how we perceive language and how language develops and how to support the development of language. But one sure way is verbal behavior, and this does have a lot of research behind it, and it's very practical, observable research, but there are other evidence-based practices through the speech and language therapists that you might see. So please don't disregard that. I like to combine it all together. It's important for us to use different modes and models and look at what works for our child, right? What works for your child, that's important. So we have these different philosophies that we want to know. We want to understand our learners, so our children aren't always learning from their environment. So that means we need to set up intentional learning opportunities for them within play, within fun experiences. And for some children, we can set those up within the naturally occurring environment and routines, and we can teach within that. We want to make it really functional, right? Especially as much as possible. There are some times where if they're not learning naturally, we might set up a bit of a contrived situation so that they can learn the skill, and then we embed it within the natural environment very quickly. So we might need to set up some more structured learning opportunities where we practice a particular skill so that the child understands what to do, and then that's embedded within the play and within the routine. Often I hear a lot of speech and language pathologists talking about just model. I am a strong believer that modeling isn't always enough, okay? I don't feel for a lot of our autistic children, just modeling isn't going to help them produce language kind of by osmosis, right? For sure, modeling language is huge, and I don't want you to stop doing it, but we often need to do more than just model. For our typically developing children, modeling is often enough, right? Because they're paying attention to the other environments and they're engaging. But for our children with autism, modeling is not usually enough. So what do? Okay, we need to teach imitation. So imitation is copying. In order for our children to copy language, they need to know how to copy and what to do. And this applies to play skills, self-help skills, toileting, dressing, lots of other, it could be even like fine motor skills, right? Imitation is so important. We can do this within play, but it's important for us to teach our children to imitate, and we might need to start somewhere easier. So imitating language is tricky. Some of our kids might have dyspraxia or apraxia, which is where the motor planning, the ability to plan your tongue and coordinate those oral motor movements is delayed, and there's the connection between the brain and the motor neurons is delayed, or there's something going on. I'm not a neuroscientist, so I don't know all the technical words, but there's a disconnect. So with those situations, we can teach language. We work on it in a bit of a different way, and we need to realize that being able to copy is going to be much harder for those children than for other children who don't have dyspraxia or apraxia. Okay, so to get our kids to copy, if they don't, making a sound can't be prompted, right? I can't force someone or help someone to make a sound most of the time. Maybe there could be some creative ways there, but if we're looking at positive teaching strategies, that's really difficult. So we need to teach our children to understand what copying is and copying on cue, so that they can learn this with the verbal side of things. So we might start off with copying actions with objects. So that is kind of the easiest level of imitation. And your child might already do this. So for example, I might have a box and a pen or a marker, and I might just be like, let's copy. So you might have a drum, you might do some actions that are within play, and you're going to model, and then you're going to prompt your child to do it as well, because they might not even understand what you want them to do. So sometimes we need to use some gentle prompting so they realize, oh, that's what I have to do. And we practice different actions. I just realized I'm tapping while I'm talking. So we're going to practice different actions in different order, right? We want to mix it up so our kids don't become too rigid and fixated on like, this is the one action with this object. So next time I might say, do this, right? And I'm doing a different action. Or I might say, copy me, and put something on my head. Or I might do, watch this, copy, right? And I'm doing something else with the item. Notice that I'm also changing the instruction I'm giving. I'm not telling them tap the box, because they might understand that, and so they're listening to the instruction as opposed to watching you and copying. So this is a really important element. That was just a quick introduction to copying. There's a lot of different elements to it in regards to how to teach a child. I'm not here to talk about imitation today, but you got a little sneak peek of that. If you want to learn more, get in contact with me. I can easily help you know how to do that with your child. The important element here is that once we teach our child to copy these different actions, we're also doing it within play, and we're giving that cue, copy, watch me, do this, right? We're changing what we're saying, and we're guiding them to follow our actions or follow other kids' actions, right? Get the sibling to say that. Get the friend who's coming over to say that as well. So once our children can copy actions with objects, actions with their hands, like fine motor actions like this, like shaking, like touching your head, like rolling your hands, jumping, clapping, touching body parts. Once they can copy some of these actions, we can then move into copying actions with our mouth. And we might start off with actions that don't require any sound. So we might do this, copy me. I'm making a bit of a sound, but we wouldn't necessarily expect a sound. Copy me, right? They can do fun little things. Copy me, right? It could be silly, it could be fun. It's meant to be fun. Remember that making learning fun helps children learn faster, and they're going to get more out of it. Okay, so we move to actions with our mouth and our tongue and our teeth. We might even do, right, chomping. We might stick our tongue out. We might move our tongue from side to side, right? To be able to do that is really difficult, but we need to be able to manipulate our tongue to produce sounds, right? To use language and use that, develop language, verbal language. Okay, so this is a real foundation for your child to develop verbal language skills. I am talking about the verbal side at the moment, but there is a side of teaching communication that is non-verbal, which we can do as well. So let me just jump back to make sure I get here. All right. Cool. So we've got that progression. One other thing is, once your child is saying some sounds or some words, we want to make sure that we are modeling a lot, for sure, and modeling one step greater than their current language level. So if they're using single words to communicate, you can start to use 2-word utterances, okay? And if they're using 2-word utterances, you might use a short sentence, 3 to 5-word utterances. You want to think about using different descriptive language, right? Big, little, red, green, blue, fast, slow. So different attributes to help the child understand more descriptive language. This is a bit more advanced, right? So if they're not yet requesting for preferred items, then you might not expand it that much. But just think about going one level more than their current language. Okay. Also, if they're starting to use a bit of language, I want you to practice pause. So that means if you have something that your child wants, okay, they want the sparkly box. Now my child maybe can't use 2-word utterances, they're using single words, so I might just say box, okay? So I'll have the box and they're reaching for it, they want it, and I'll say box, and then I'll wait, and then I'll see if they can say box, and I might do it a second time, box, and then see if they say box, and then I'll say a third time and hand it to them if they haven't said it yet. Box. There you go. Let's play with the box. Bang, bang, bang. Okay. So when I'm modeling the language I want my child to imitate, I'm keeping it really short and simple, and I'm pausing. So I don't just want to say box and give it to them. I'm putting the pause in to encourage my child to copy, to realize that they have to do something a little extra to get it. After 3 times, it's good to, you've repeated it 3 times, right? It's a good number of times for them to hear the word, and then you give it to them. We want to prevent the meltdowns, right? We don't want to intentionally trigger a tantrum, but I want to allow time for my child to copy and to attempt to use the word independently. Another thing is, if you know your child can say box, maybe you're not giving the verbal prompt, you're pausing before the verbal prompt. So you might give an expectant look. You might be like, oh, and see if then they say box, and then you give it to them, okay? Another important element I've talked about, functional communication, okay? For our children to learn that communication serves a purpose, we want to teach them that when they say the word or they attempt to say the word, they get the item, right? As much as possible. So if my child is saying, "Bah," and I'm like, "Box, good work, here's the box." So I'm going to give them the box because they attempted to say something. And this is where I want to reinforce, right? Reinforce means giving them the outcome they want so that it increases in the future. So I want to reinforce their attempt at using language to communicate. This helps language grow. And then over time, I can do what's called shaping, which is shaping that sound into the correct word. Okay, that was a lot. So we want to think about imitation. We want to think about pausing. We want to think about saying the name of the item 3 times before giving it to our child. We want to think about pausing before we give the item to the child if they're already able to say the word or the phrase. One other tip I have is I often will point to my mouth. I want the child to be attending to this because this is where they're going to learn to copy sounds, right? I might be going "b" or "s" or "e", right? There's different shapes that I'm making with my mouth that I want them to eventually copy to help them make the sounds. For some kids, if I point to my mouth and I'll be like, "b", box, and then I take their hand and point it to their lips, sometimes they just say the word or the sound, right? It's a good model prompt situation. I can't prompt the actual language, but I can prompt them to point to a place where I want them to learn the sounds come from, if that makes sense. Okay. So there are some things you can try with your child. I wish you all the best. Remember, I'm back in 2 weeks' time for our Q&A and Tip Tuesday again. And just know that my resources and programs are now live. So if you are interested in the mini course, which is Understanding Autism Behaviors, Understanding Autism Behaviors, the Parent Roadmap. I have the Calm the Chaos Toolkit, which is my ebook, and I have my Busting Behaviors Protocol. Feel free to get in contact, and I'll see you next time.